Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. Today I'm beginning with a new series which is going to be for consumer psychology. This is for Cambridge A levels, E2. Options are there. You have to take either clinical, consumer, health, or organization. I've already covered clinical on my channel. So if you haven't watched that series already and if you have opted for clinical, you can watch that one first and then you can come to this, which is for consumer. My style is going to be exactly the same for this series, so I'm going to make it a little quicker. We are going to go over the explanations for all topics, all descriptions, all evaluations we'll be doing one unit at a time. So today we are beginning with physical environment. First part of the video, we will go over the basic descriptions of key concepts as well as studies. And then next part of the video, we will go over the evaluations for the relevant issues and debates as covered in the syllabus. Before we begin, I want you to know that these are not exam strategy videos. These are just conceptual explanations. If you want exam strategy, I have solved many papers on my channel. Those videos are freely available. Especially for consumer psychology, I have solved like full past papers. So if you just look at the Cambridge IGCSE playlist, you will easily find those videos. Also, I take private tuition for psychology and I also sell notes like essay packs, model answers, past paper solutions. I've been helping students get their A stars in psychology since more than 12 years now. So if you're looking for classes or to purchase study material, my WhatsApp number, email ID, and store link are available in the description box and pinned comment below. Let's begin with today's lesson. So the first section in consumer psychology is about store exterior and interior design. Consumer psychology is all about people who purchase goods and services, meaning consumers, how they get impacted by various features of stores, the techniques that are used to sell products to them, information about products that they receive, and in turn, how they evaluate and appraise stores, products, services being sold to them, the way things are being pitched to them. Consumer psychology is all about that. So it's basically about behavior of those who make purchases, meaning people like you and me, consumers. We all consume some goods or services, many in fact, goods and services. So we are all consumers, and this is a highly relevant option for all of us, regardless of whether we want to pursue anything academically in this or not. So the first aspect we get to learn about in the Cambridge consumer syllabus is how store exterior designs influence consumer behavior. From the name only you can understand store exterior, the outside of a store. Supposing you're going to purchase some clothes or even groceries to a store, before you even enter the store, you come across what is there on the outside of a store. So how does that impact you? First, we should know what all is found on the outside of a store. So imagine yourself, you're going to a store, what do you get to see before you enter the store? The storefront, literally the front of the store. What do you feel like? What do you experience when you're there outside? You get to see the appearance of the store. Is it shabby? Is it neat? And it creates a first impression on you. For example, if it is neat, you feel like entering the store. You feel this is going to be a good store. But if it is shabby, ill maintained, you might feel repulsed and you might think twice before entering the store. One example of how storefronts are designed today is glass front boutiques are there. So they are made of glass so that you can look inside and you can see the mannequins dressed in their clothes and you can see racks of clothes to see what patterns and fabrics are there inside. This usually works well with consumers. From a paper point of view, there is a bad habit among students to prepare only studies for consumer psychology. Why I'm giving time to this storefront window displays, general descriptions and impact on behavior is because you do have to include it in answers in the paper. If you don't, you lose marks. I'm talking not only about your essays, short answers can directly come from these concepts. So it is important to prepare for them as well. Then we have window displays. Before we enter store, many times we see a window display, literally a glass wall is there behind which we can see some sample of what we will get to see inside the store. For example, if it's a boutique, again, a mannequin might be there who's wearing the clothes or apparel which is there inside. And think about any time you've passed through a window display, what have you seen? How have you felt? You might have felt attracted. Looking at what the mannequin is wearing, you might have felt exploratory. Let me go and see inside. What is this? So it can attract you and it can increase your interest. Example is if it is a modern clothing store, you might see a mannequin wearing jeans. There's also landscaping on the exterior. Landscaping includes vegetation, plants, flowers, sometimes even decorations. So anything that is used to build the atmosphere on the outside to create a nice environment. How do you feel when there are plants, flowers before you can enter a store? Most people describe they feel welcomed in that store. They feel a sense of warmth in that environment. So, for example, there might be pots with colorful flowers outside a boutique which can attract you. Now, yes, there is a study under this. For consumer psychology, there are lots of summary studies, the smaller studies. We have to know them in the format that is there on the screen. Aim, method, results, and conclusion. These are not case studies. Where there are case studies, it will be indicated. There we will learn those studies in full details, just like the AS course studies. These ones we just have to know summaries. So as I'm explaining to you and as you can see on the screen, you have to prepare it that way. Maurer et al. Were researchers who investigated how what we were seeing just now, storefronts, landscaping, how that can influence consumer behavior. So that was the aim of their study. Aim, as you have learned in AS, what is the purpose or objective of doing a study? They wanted to see how two aspects of store exterior, specifically window displays and landscaping, how these can influence three behaviors of customers: their mood, their liking of the store exterior, and their patronage intention. Patronage intention means would they become patrons of the store and recommend it to others, and would they revisit the store themselves? So let's see how Mover et al. Went about their study. What was the method? How did they conduct their study? They conducted an experiment like a true lab experiment. They invited participants to a lab. Ordinary people were there. They made them read a description of a store. Now, the description of the store was manipulated in four ways. So, the store description is the IV, and there are four levels at which it is manipulated. It was an independent measures design. So, there are four separate groups in the study. One group of participants read about a store exterior for a boutique in which there were only window displays outside, but no landscaping was there. Another group read about the same description of the boutique, but there was landscaping outside, but no window displays. The third group read about the same boutique, and outside they read about both. There was landscaping also and window display also described there. And finally, there was a fourth group, a control group, which read about the same boutique, but outside. Neither window display nor landscaping was described. So both the features of exterior were not there for this group. Mower et al. Just compared these variables which we saw earlier, mood, liking, and patronage, how they differed when it came to these different four descriptions of the store. In their results, what was the outcome of the study? They found that when window displays and landscaping both were present, people showed greater liking of the exterior, so they gave higher ratings for how much they liked the exterior when they read about it. They also showed higher patronage intentions. They also indicated that they would recommend the store to others and they would like to come to it again. But if there were no window displays and no landscaping, that is for the control group, then there was no liking and no increased patronage for the store. If only window display or only landscaping was there, then there was some liking and some patronage intention. But if both were there, there was high liking and high patronage intention. Only the one variable which they studied, mood, that was not impacted by window displays and landscaping. So window displays and landscaping are limited to the extent to which they can increase positive consumer behavior. They cannot increase mood, but they can increase liking and patronage intentions. So what do we conclude from the study? Conclusion meaning what is the larger inference that we can draw from these results? Definitely positive consumer responses increase if store exterior is thoughtfully designed, including window displays and landscaping, and people show increased intention at least to buy. Even if not real buying was not measured in the study, people didn't really go to the store and buy something, but at least they indicated they would if they would have really seen it. This is what we need to know about exterior. Now let's come to interior. Interior of a store refers to the layout of the store, the arrangement inside the store. So now we're not talking about outside, we're talking about what is inside the store. When we go to physical stores, that is offline stores, we typically see one of three layouts. These are the most common layouts or arrangements that are used inside. One is a grid layout. Grid layout is what you typically see in a supermarket or grocery store, as you can see in the example. So when you go to a store and you see very neat shelves are there, one behind the other, there are racks and shelves, and they are in parallel columns. Think about typical grocery sections in a hypermarket or supermarket that you have been to. Then we say there is a grid layout, and it's literally a rectangular arrangement. You will see very neatly things are arranged, breadth-wise also and length-wise also. Typically, they are used in grocery stores because groceries are something we buy frequently and we do not give much thought to buying them. They are just repeated purchases, which we have to do. We do not typically have particular interest in buying these products. We have to do it because we need those products. How they are helpful? Grid layouts help us to buy things that we have planned, especially like if we have a shopping list, because they are so neatly arranged. We can easily locate what we want. And if over time we keep on visiting the same store, we memorize also where things are. So it's not difficult to find the things, and so we can be quick about shopping. Because we are not particularly interested in this product, we want to save as much time as possible. And that is what grid layouts help us to do. Then we have free form layouts. Unlike grid layouts, these are not very planned and not very neat. So these are those layouts like we'll see in small fashion boutiques, apparel stores, or gifting shops, where the arrangement is flexible. That is the key thing. Some sections may be large, like say if I go to a clothing store and they specialize in dresses. So the dressing section might be large. But in addition, they also keep jeans and t-shirts, but that's not their main focus. So they might devote only a small section to it. So here the store owner is free to arrange the store however they want. And the arrangement need not be rectangular. Things might be spaced out in random arrangements. We go to buy clothes or gifts with an intention to explore, to see with interest what all options are available. So we like to uh, give more time than we would to groceries, for example. And that is why these layouts are very helpful because they encourage people to explore and browse. Finally, we have an unusual type of layout which is called a racetrack layout. These are found in IKEA stores, for example, and I think Tiger stores. These are layouts where literally they are like racetracks. If you see a racetrack where people are competing, like literally racing or horses are racing, there's a definite starting point and there's a definite ending point, and you have to race through the whole course and go out. Midway, you cannot exit the course anywhere wherever you want. So unlike grid and freeform layout where you can exit and enter from anywhere, it's not possible. In racetrack layout, the key thing is there is a designated route and you have to only follow that to complete your shopping and come out from there. This is a very unusual layout, like not commonly found. It is just used to encourage shoppers to browse a lot of products because there is no predicting what will come where, and people are being forced to travel the entire route that is available. So they will inevitably end up seeing whatever is available. Again, for exploration purposes, for some fun, entertainment, unusual shopping experience, people might like to have this type of a layout. We should know that today there are virtual layouts, like if you see on Amazon or if you're in India on Flipkart, and there are similar many online stores, countless online stores are there. They also adopt typically one of these three layouts, and they are similar to how the layouts are there in physical stores, but of course they are not the same thing, because if you look at Amazon, for example, you will have the home page and you have to click that sections on the home page to reach. You do not have to physically move through pages to access products. But how they are similar, how they are parallel to physical stores, for that I will strongly recommend the Cambridge textbook, though I don't recommend that much. But for this topic, they have covered it really well. They have really explained very well how those physical offline layouts are adopted to online layouts. The grid virtual layout, for example, if I go to Amazon or similar store, if products are neatly arranged in categories, in sections, like for clothing there is one separate list and there are buttons which I can click to access particular clothing, like say males informal clothes, females formal clothes. Then on the right there are groceries, under that vegetables, fruits. So if it's all like very neatly arranged in separate lists and there are all lists on the home page and I can go to whichever category and section I want, that is how a grid layout is adopted virtually. Freeform virtual layout is when on the home page there's a larger section dedicated to one type of products. So one category is given, say, a bigger section on the home page and there are lots of buttons under it, but another category is given a small section on the side corner somewhere and very limited buttons are there which I can click. That is the adaptation of freeform layout. And racetrack layout is when I have to go to an online store and I have to only click buttons in a fixed way. Like when I click one button, I'll be forced to like redirected compulsorily to another page. Then I click that, then I have to only go to another page. I don't have an option of where to go. There's one button on every page that I'm redirected to and I have to keep on pressing till I can finally exit the browser and get out of the store that way. So this is how layouts have been adopted. Now, Recopolis et al. In 2004, they were very interested in seeing how people respond to virtual layouts. Do they respond to them in the same way that they respond to physical layouts? In 2004, online shopping was popular but not as popular and widespread as it is today. So this is one of the initial researches in this area, and Recopolis et al. Wanted to see, as an initial exploratory research, how people respond to virtual layouts. So this is again a summary study, and the aim of their research was very simple. Like I told you, they wanted to see response online. So those three layouts only which we saw, grid, freeform and racetrack, they saw how people respond to each of these on a shopping, what would we say, online shopping store they had created, just like Amazon. Specially, exclusively for their study, they had created an online store to make the experience feel real. They had actually given participants shopping lists on which they could plan out what they would be buying. It was a grocery store, and they had given them some money which they could actually spend, and they would be getting the products they ordered at the end of the study. What all they were measuring, you can see on the screen, like what were their dependent variables. The IV, I think it should be obvious to you, grid, racetrack or freeform layout. Different participants saw different layouts. So it was independent measures design, and they were measuring how useful, how easy to use, how entertaining, etc. People found the different layouts. In the results, what they were expecting was, because they were just comparing against people's responses to physical stores. In their study of physical stores, whenever they showed people grid layouts, they would say that is the easiest to use for planned shopping, like we saw. But they found that when it comes to virtual layout, people did say it was easiest to use, but they did not find it as useful as it is in physical stores. They found grid layout was easy to use, not the most useful one. When it came to freeform layout, in their study of offline stores, they had found that it is said to be easiest to use and it increases shopping time, of course, because people are browsing so much. But when it came to the online store, they just said they find it most useful and most entertaining. So they did not indicate that it was easiest to use, and they did not say that they spend too much time. Actually, in the study, there was an automatic timer because they are doing online shopping, which would record how much time they were spending in the store. So they did not find that people spend extraordinarily high time on the freeform layout. Finally, racetrack layout in physical stores, people say it is most entertaining. Like we saw, it has a designated route to follow. In online stores, they spend a lot of time. We don't know why. Maybe it's frustrating because they have to only explore everything compulsorily, and they don't indicate that it is most entertaining. That makes us feel that maybe it's not too pleasurable an experience, but it's just that because things are not easily accessible, maybe that's why they spend too much time. The key thing we have to notice, There is a stark difference between how people perceive layouts in physical offline stores and in online stores. Response to online layouts is not the same as it is to physical layouts of the same type. This is what they have discovered. So, of course, conclusion or interpretation of these results is responses differ, and that's why sellers or store designers should not try to blindly adopt physical layouts to online stores. They should consider what sort of a response they want according to which type of store they are launching online, and accordingly they should select a layout. This is the description we need to know for the first section. Let us now come to evaluation. Because this is the first lesson, I'm just orienting you to the lesson. Next lesson onwards, we'll go faster. In evaluation, the issues and debates I take, you might wonder there are 10 issues and debates in A2. Why am I taking these only? These are listed in the syllabus. And the way of putting them is the peel format in which we have to write in the paper. So I believe we should prepare accordingly. And we have to cover both topics if both are asked in the paper, right? They combine two topics. In consumer, the combination is pretty straightforward because usually we have two topics, unlike clinical. We have two topics under one section. So they will combine these two only, like exterior and interior. At the most, they might say study of exterior, study of interior, putting more emphasis on the study rather than the concepts. Either case, whether they take only the studies or the larger concepts or both, we will have to combine both these topics when we are writing a 10 marker, and we will have to follow the peel format. We have to develop points to get full marks. We can't just know generic points. Okay, cultural differences are there, quantitative data is there. We have to know how to relate them to studies and how to evaluate these points. So accordingly, you will have to prepare, as you can see on the screen and as I will be guiding you now. So in every lesson, we will be going about the same way. If you need to know more about the peel format, please watch any of my exam strategy videos on the channel. I won't be able to cover it extensively right now. Okay, the first issue given for this topic in the syllabus is cultural differences. It is considered to be a weakness of both investigations, whether it comes to exteriors or interiors. Most studies have been done in the West, and then they try to generalize whatever is found there to non-Western cultures. But it is likely that non-Western populations will respond differently to exteriors and interiors. For example, if we talk about layouts, interiors, which we were seeing last, collectivist cultures, people might prefer grid layouts. The reason for this is that people typically in collectivist cultures do not have much time to shop like freely. They rarely do it, only on occasions. This is because they typically have large families and there's a lot of regular shopping, like grocery shopping and all that needs to be done. So grid layouts are really preferred for their time saving, efficient quality. Whereas in the West, because those are individualistic cultures, people do give importance to themselves and their experiences of shopping, and they don't see it only as a duty. So they might prefer free-form layout, as we saw in this study. Recopolis also, there was much appreciation for free-form layouts. The study was done in Greece, so at least we can remember in an individualistic culture. Though it's not given here, you can give an example from exteriors also. For Mower et al. Study, we see people prefer landscaping and window displays. Again, it was done in an individualistic culture, I think in the USA. There, seeing vegetation, landscaping, and all can be a little rare because nature is something that has been sacrificed in the way of urban development to a very large extent. So the study was done in a developed country. In developing countries, still there are many places where vegetation, landscaping is intact. There are lots of flowers and trees, everything to see anyways. So people might not have any particular attraction towards things they see routinely just because it's the outsider store. So it might not prove to be as attractive in non-Western cultures. Or for example, when it comes to window displays, and let's say a mannequin is wearing Western clothes. Again, in individualistic cultures, like that style of clothing originates from there, so people would appreciate it. In certain conservative non-Western cultures, people might not appreciate seeing a mannequin wearing Western clothes. It might be offensive to them because they might be used to conservative clothing. So definitely, we cannot blindly generalize preferences from the West to non-Western cultures. That becomes a limitation. Coming to use of questionnaires, that's the next issue given. Both studies have used questions, Mover et al. For the ratings on different variables, like we saw, for example, patronage intentions, Recopolis for liking of different layouts, and we saw ease of use, usefulness, etc. It's both a strength and a weakness. Strength in the sense that because these are questionnaires, quantitative data is collected, so we can easily compare across participants and declare which layout is the most preferred or which exterior element is most preferred. Weakness is that these are just self reports, these are just opinions and intentions, these are not actual purchase behaviors. We are not going and seeing whether really people are buying things or not in neither study. In Recopolis, though they did have a shopping list and they did purchase products, but after all, they knew they are in a study. So their way of shopping might be different from how they would shop in real life. If it was their own money, they might have been more cautious about how they were shopping and how they were experiencing the environment. So definitely, questionnaires are good for objective comparisons, but they have the downside that we are not sure that what we are finding here will translate to real life purchasing behavior. Coming to quantitative data closely related to questionnaires, numerical ratings have been taken in both studies. Again, same examples here. It is good to compare statistically unbiased results can be found. For example, in Recopolis, if they are saying grid layout is the easiest to use, it's not a subjective interpretation of the researchers. That is what ratings are indicating, that people gave highest ease ratings to grid layouts. The problem is that we do not get insights. Why did people find grid layout very easy? We are assuming some things why they must have found it easy, but we haven't directly asked them to elaborate. Or in the Mover et al. Study, what was so attractive about window displays or landscaping that they would like to repeatedly visit the store? We don't get clarity on those aspects. Objective subjective data, again very close to the previous one. Both studies had objective data, though they are coming from self reports as such, but yes, objective data because it was quantitative. So same as the previous point. It improves reliability because we can consistently get similar ratings across participants. The way of rating is the same. Problem is again because the ratings are subjective. People are visualizing, for example, in Mover et al., people are differently imagining the descriptions of store exterior that they are given. In Recopolis, they are differently interpreting the layouts that they are exposed to. We might not find much consistency across participants to that extent, that everyone's imagination can vary, and if they are comparing what they are seeing with their past experiences in a boutique, or they are comparing what they are seeing on an online store with their past experience in an offline store, that would also differ from person to person. So to that extent, reliability is decreased. Finally, they've given ecological validity. Here, there's a very big mistake students make. They say that Recopolis et al. Is not generalizable to offline stores. That was not the purpose of the study. When I described it to you, I did not tell you that they wanted to see how people respond to physical offline stores. They wanted to see how people respond to online stores. So when we say that they use virtual grocery stores, we have to say in laboratories. That is the issue. The issue is not that they use virtual store. The issue is they did not use a real virtual store that people were navigating from their homes. They made them navigate that store in controlled settings. So in their home, when they go to an online store, how they would respond it when they are using their own money, or when they don't have a proper shopping list given by researchers, that we do not come to know from this study. Mover et al. Has very poor ecological validity because people are just reading about a boutique. They are not actually visiting a boutique and not experiencing the boutique. In real life, when we go to a boutique, we don't only see the clothes there and the landscaping and window displays. We have a certain budget against which we are shopping. We are time bound. There are other customers who might be obstructing our view or distracting us or helping us to navigate better. All that totality of experience is lost when we are just reading about a store and imagining ourselves. So both studies have poor ecological validity for their own reasons, and that limits generalizability to everyday shopping experiences. That is it for the first topic in consumer psychology. I hope this lesson has been helpful to you. In the next one, we will look at the next session, music, sound, and consumer behavior, which has the key study not at all. So stay tuned for that, and in the meanwhile, keep on revising this one. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.